Carolyn, are you on? I think I saw you. Carolyn Yorio.
I'm here. I'm ready.
Thank you. Carolyn's taking minutes for us today. I am recording, Carolyn, and I can send you the recording after as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Kevin, are you ready to go?
You need me to do something? Oh, I'm kidding.
Oh, okay. All right, go for it then.
Yeah, I'm ready whenever. You've got control of the PowerPoint, right?
Yes.
All right. So, welcome to our annual CoC governance meeting. Again, our continuum of care is Cincinnati, Hamilton County. So that's what we're sort of focused on here. I'm Kevin Finn. I'm the president of Strategies to End Homelessness, and we are the lead agency for the Cincinnati, Hamilton County continuum of care. We'll get to a little bit more of what exactly that means in a minute. Each year when we do this, I always think it's necessary that we sort of level set and make sure that everybody understands what a continuum of care for the homeless means, because that's a term, or CoC for short, that gets sort of thrown around to mean different things. So just to clarify what we're talking about, according to HUD, a continuum of care is a community plan to organize and deliver housing and services to meet the needs of people who are specifically homeless, and to help move people toward having housing and self-sufficiency. So it's not about managing homelessness. It's not about keeping people homeless, anything like that. It's about having a community plan that moves people out of homelessness into housing and toward self-sufficiency. So that's what HUD thinks it means. If you go to the next slide, Laura. But the term CoC primarily gets thrown around to mean two things. It is a program from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and as such, it's a funding stream. So about 20 different organizations in Hamilton County get funded with continuum of care program dollars that come from HUD. So it is very much a program and a funding stream, but in order to tap into that funding stream, local communities are required to have a certain structure in place. And if you don't have that structure in place, you don't qualify to receive the CoC funding. So CoC also refers to the structure that is required. And then also it is, a geographic area as well. So as I already mentioned, it's a shorthand for the geographic area that we're talking about, in our case, Cincinnati, Hamilton County. So let's talk a little bit about the structure that is required, because it ties in directly to why we're here today and what we're doing. So the continuum of care is considered also to be the group responsible for carrying out responsibilities. And the group that is responsible for those responsibilities is the representative and relevant organizations that are operating within the continuum of care. So that's basically you all. Strategies working along with all of your agencies. We basically make up our local continuums of care. HUD has certain requirements, or minimum requirements, of what has to happen within a continuum. One of those is that there are meetings at least twice a year where all of the continuum of care representatives, again, the relevant organizations, get together to conduct business. This is one of those meetings. We typically do more than two, but HUD requires there to be at least two. I think of this meeting, the scoring review meeting that we do in the spring, and then our local prioritization event that we typically do in July or August, as the three sort of most regular meetings of our local continuum of care. Our agenda for today is going to revolve more around governance, as we'll get to in just a little bit. But then, it would be hard to do a lot of work as a giant group of 20 agencies. So HUD also requires that local continuums have what they call a CoC board that acts on behalf of the larger group of organizations. So we're going to talk about our governance charter today. We're also going to talk about who the membership is of our CoC board, which locally, since long before this was a HUD requirement, our CoC board locally has been referred to as the Homeless Clearinghouse. So, but the CoC appoints that CoC board, also designates an HMIS lead agency and a collaborative applicant to assist with the CoC's responsibilities. At Strategies to End Homelessness, we are that HMIS lead agency. We are also the collaborative applicant, but we are named to function in those roles by the CoC board, the Homeless Clearinghouse. So next slide. Laura, is this? Oh no, I got
Yep,
one more.
no, this is it. And I'm going to me.
All right. So
Thanks,
just
Kevin.
a little bit more about the Homeless Clearinghouse. Again, appointed to act on behalf of the entire CoC. That's part of what we're doing today. Representatives of the relevant organizations and those serving the homeless, and include at least one person with lived experience of homelessness on the CoC board. In the makeup of our Homeless Clearinghouse, we actually have 3 seats that are dedicated to people with lived experience. Then I'm going to turn it over to Laura, and she's going to tell you all a little bit more about the specifics of who serves on our CoC board.
Thanks, Kevin. So every year, work groups, committees, and organizations vote on or nominate members for the clearinghouse. The clearinghouse then votes to approve membership. However, the community, or the CoC, you all today, must conduct the final vote for approval for the clearinghouse membership. There are 28 seats total on the clearinghouse. You'll notice that no agency names are listed because when a person sits on the CoC board, they are not representing their agency. They are representing the population served by that seat. For example, the ESG shelter seat holder also works at Found House. However, when she sits and votes on the board, she's representing all ESG shelter operators, not just Found House's interests. The governance charter does have a maximum number of clearinghouse members that can be employed by one agency, and that maximum is 2. And this is to ensure that the board just remains diverse. So these are our seats. We have a Hamilton County representative. We have 2 lived experience seats. We have a homeless advocate, healthcare for homeless, housing authority, victim service provider, veteran services, education liaison, ESG shelter diversion. We have 10 CoC work groups. In 2023, we added the people with lived expertise of homelessness work group, which we'll talk about a little bit later in our presentation and give an update on that, how that group's doing. So we went to 10. We have 3 executive directors that are from a CoC funded agency and 1 executive director from a non-CoC funded agency. The public library is also a new seat that we'll be discussing today. The UFA or HMIS lead, and I can't remember if I said City of Cincinnati because we went in a circle, but they're on our on our board as well. I know this is super small, but when you have 28 seats, it's hard to condense it into one slide. So I will go through this list, but here are the list of nominations for, I can barely see it, but I think I have everybody memorized. Here are the list of nominations for the 2024 Clearinghouse membership. Some seats have what we call proxies. So there may be 2 people listed and they could vote. Only one of them would vote if they were both attending the meeting. So for the City of Cincinnati, we have Virginia Talent and Deanna White. Hamilton County, we have Lachey Roach and Maria Collins. The homeless or formerly homeless seats, we have 2 members for those seats. The first one is Kira Reitzman. She's employed by Talbert House. And then Aiden Sims. The homeless advocate seat is Josh Spring. He's with the Homeless Coalition. Healthcare for Homeless is Brian Vanderhorst. He is with Neighbor Hub, formerly known as, oh my gosh, I already forgot what it was. CHN. Yeah. Cincinnati Health Network. God, there we go. Homeless Education Liaison is Rebecca Beach with Project Connect or CPS. Veteran Services is Nicole Michelson. She is with the Cincinnati VA. The Victim Services Provider seat is Joanna Glover. She is with the YWCA of Greater Cincinnati. She is also a co-chair of the Homeless Clearinghouse. And it's also, is she on today? It's also her birthday, so happy birthday to Joanna.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Public Housing Authority is the CMHA, and that's Greg Johnson and Lisa Eischen. UFA and HMIS lead, the Strategies to End Homelessness, and Jennifer McEvely is in that seat. Public Library, that's a new seat, is the Cincinnati Hamilton County Public Library, and that is David Siders. Youth Work Group in Rye is Kelly Dunnigan from Lighthouse. Family Homelessness Work Group is Tiffany Wilson from the YWCA. Racial Equity Work Group is Elijah Montgomery from Talbot House. Homeless Outreach Group is Danielle Murphy from GCB. Oh my gosh. Permit Supportive Housing is Carolyn Yorio. She is from Caracol. She is also our secretary of the clearinghouse, and she's taking minutes today. So thank you again, Carolyn. Rapid Rehousing Transitional Housing Work Group, that seat is now vacant, so they'll be voting next month on that. So at our next full community meeting, we will be voting again to approve that seat. Homeless Veteran Work Group is also Cincinnati VA, Brooke Prince Slocum. Coordinated Entry Work Group is Simon Bradley from Ohio Valley Goodwill. Shelter Work Group is Elizabeth Elliott from Shelter House. She is our other co-chair of the clearinghouse. People with Lived Expertise Work Group is Amanda Sarber. She works at the Urban League. ESG Shelter is Jessica Mount from Found House. ESG Shelter Diversion is Brittany Davidson from Free Store. The three CoC executive directors are Linda Sider from Caracol, Paul Hafner from Lighthouse, and Mary Burke Rivers from Over the Rhine Community Housing. And the non-CoC executive director is Dana Saxton from New Life Furniture. So you. Everyone on this call can vote on everything that we're discussing today. You do not have to be a member of Clearinghouse nor a member of any work group to have a vote today. So we do ask that everyone votes either in favor, against, or abstains from voting. So we'll say all in favor, all opposed, and any abstentions. So it'd be ideal if everyone raises their virtual hand in that situation so we can account for everyone here. And with that, do I have a motion to approve the 2024 Clearinghouse membership? Colleen? So Colleen, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I can second. Yep.
Thank you, Joanna. Joanna will second. So all in favor of approval of the 2024 Clearinghouse membership, please raise your hand in the Teams. We have, let me see how many people we have here today. We have 54 people on the call. And slowly we're getting there. Wait, one more minute, one more second here. All right, so we have 41 in favor. I'm going to lower everyone's hands for you so you don't have to worry about
Hey,
that.
Laura.
Mhm.
It was asked in the chat if we were going to provide an explanation of why the library was being added to the clearinghouse, added as a seat to the clearinghouse.
Yeah, so one of the things that came up, I didn't see this. Thank you for monitoring the chat. If other strategies people could monitor the chat for me, that'd be great. So thank you, Kim. The reason that we added the public library to the clearinghouse is that we hear this from the People with Lived Expertise work group. We've heard this from the other CoC work groups, from community members, that the public library has become a hub for those experiencing homelessness in our community. That is a location that many of them go to access service, not just the library services, but community-wide services. Service providers go to the hub to meet those experiencing homelessness. And they've been really instrumental in trainings, advocacy, and assistance to our folks in our community that are experiencing homelessness. So it came up during the strategic planning session back in November of the clearinghouse. A motion was made to include them into the clearinghouse membership because their voice is very important to the work that we're doing. And they have a really good perspective on the homeless system. I hope that answered your question. I don't know if there's any other questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. There was another comment that is there going to be an opportunity for discussion before taking full votes? I guess the question is really, do we have time for that in the meeting or not?
Yeah, we can have some of the policies will definitely open it up for specific questions, but I can, is there any other comments or questions on the clearinghouse membership? All right, so we have those in favor. Anyone opposed to the clearinghouse membership? Please raise your hand. And any abstentions? Strategies, if you could raise your hand if you're abstaining, the strategies folks, just so it's easy to count. We have 4 people abstaining. So thank you all for that. For help with that part of the meeting. All right. Okay, now we'll go into the governance charter. So we referenced the governance charter in some of the earlier slides. So the governance charter is a document that contains the purpose, structure, and function of the CoC, providing guiding principles of membership and participation. It identifies responsibilities delegated by the CoC to its board, committees or work groups, and agents. The governance charter describes provisions for governance through the clearinghouse. The clearinghouse reviews at minimum, it's actually throughout the entire year, but at least twice a year to identify and draft any required edits or changes that then go to this community, to the CoC, for review, final vote, and approval. I sent a copy of the governance charter to all who registered for this meeting and will resend to all attendees after the meeting. So if you didn't get a copy of that, or if you didn't register in advance, I will be sending it to everyone who's on the call. We'll also be posting the governance charter on Strategy's website once it's approved by this body. For 2024, the governance charter only had one edit that needs to be voted on today, and that is the addition of the public library seat. So is there any questions or comments about this addition or edit to the governance charter or the governance charter in general? Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the edit to the governance charter? Shannon Smith. I see a motion. A second, is that Alex Desmond? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Again, everyone can vote. Okay, I think we're at 36, so I will lower our hand. Oh, 37. All right, I'm going to lower everyone's hand. Okay, anyone opposed to the edit? And then anyone abstaining from voting, please raise your hand. So we have 3 abstentions. Okay, thank you, guys. All right, next on our list to review and approve today are CoC policies. Now there's going to be a lot more probably discussion and questions about these. CoC policies are developed to govern CoC program operations. They are often drafted in work groups and subcommittees in collaboration with strategies staff and then approved by the clearinghouse. New and updated policies go to the community twice a year for review, final votes, and approval. So that's what we're doing here today. On this slide, you'll see the link to the most recently updated CoC policies on the Strategies website. They are located on Strategies website. I will be emailing the PowerPoint to the group after the meeting with all of the other materials that we review. So you will have the link to the CoC policies. I will note that this year, the community is piloting a new approach to policy development. So historically, every single month, the clearinghouse would have, it was last year, it was almost every single month. The clearinghouse would be approving edits or new policies that were developed in work groups or committees. But this year, what we're going to try out is having only twice a year where we would make any edits to the entire policy manual. So any additions, any edits would only happen twice a year. So you wouldn't be getting those updates monthly. But with that, if HUD or any other federal agencies require us to make edits to our policies for whatever reason, like this past year, there was like some VAWA edits, which we'll go over, and so there's going to be some HQS edits. Anytime that happens, that can happen off cycle. If it doesn't match our timeline of our community, then we would still make those edits to be in compliance with HUD and any other regulatory entity. So hopefully this will give work groups, subcommittees, strategies compliance, and clearinghouse time to review and properly vet new policies and policy revisions. And that will also hopefully reduce the burden of our ever-changing policy requirements on agencies. As we know, that's like a lot to keep up with, all of the regulations and policies that you all have to follow for your projects. So we're gonna try this out this year and see how it goes, and we'll make tweaks in the process along the way. I saw Joanna had her hand up. Joanna, do you have a question or comment about our CoC policies?
I don't know how I clicked that. I'm sorry. I
Oh,
took it down.
I saw you took it down, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't look
No,
over you.
sorry.
Okay, cool. All right. So the first set of policies will go to Jamie Hummer is going to review them. Jamie?
Sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. I kept clicking my mic and it wouldn't go off.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, Laura. I thought you'd have them up, so I don't have it in front of me. I'm pulling it up right now. But the first change, the first policy is the review panel policy. That one actually got a pretty full revamp this year. We added a lot of language around who sits on the committee to make it a little bit more intentional, to make sure people with lived experience are on that committee, make sure that there's the right mix of folks sitting at the table. We clarified the roles or the powers of that committee, I guess I can say. We also added some language around equity and ensuring that we are keeping an eye on that to make sure that the policy and our processes are not creating inequitable situations. You don't want me to go any more detail than that, right, Laura?
You can give as much detail.
Okay. So we'll be here all day if I go into more detail. So the access policy, we recently moved to a kind of a hybrid model for coordinated access. So instead of having a central hub, which was CAP, we expanded it to include 2 additional access points, or 3 additional access points, I should say. So the other 3 are Shelter House, Lighthouse, and the YWCA. And so we expanded to include those 4, and we aligned all of the practices at all 4 of those sites to ensure that we're all just screening everybody that comes through those access points in the same way based on subpopulations, and making sure that we are doing diversion in the same way across the system, and that we're connecting people across those access points in a standardized way. So that's that policy. The PSH eligibility requirements and prioritization policy. But a couple of things we did this year. We formalized the the high risk list. We formalized that and put it in policy this year and that just makes sure that just kind of gives us some extra levels of protection around people who are have just a lot of barriers in accessing housing, and making sure that our coordinated entry system is not putting up more barriers to the process, and make sure that people who are the most vulnerable in our community are having the best chance at getting housing. We added a priority factor in PSH and wrap housing for people whose first language is not English to be a priority factor. We also had a huge change last year in all of the priority factors that, without going into a whole lot of detail, just is helping us move towards a more equitable way of prioritizing folks for housing. So we did a lot of work on that, and that went into effect last year. And without them in front of me, I think that's it.
Thanks. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the coordinated entry policies for Jamie? All right, we'll move into other CoC policies that were added this year. So we added 3 new general CoC policies in 2023. The first one is documenting HMIS enrollments. This went into effect in January of 2023. So last year, we've had a whole year where this policy was in place. So this policy outlines expectations of each program type on HMIS enrollments, including intakes and exits, and how to do intakes and exits, or when somebody should do an intake or an exit. It also describes policy and process of completing an exit or intake in the event that the client vacates a permanent housing situation, the housing provider stops paying rental assistance, and it is determined that the client continues to need housing support from the program. That has been a question that's come up quite a few times since the implementation of this policy. So I just wanted to highlight that edit. In this situation, housing providers should exit client and complete an immediate enrollment the same day if they're going to continue to provide housing support. When a new unit is found, a new housing move-in date would be recorded on the subsequent project record. This will ensure that HMIS will accurately reflect the housing status of the client. So if the client moves directly from one unit to another unit, though, with no days of homelessness in between, it is not necessary to exit and re-enter them, because their housing move-in date would still accurately reflect the day they entered permanent housing according to that record, because they didn't become homeless at any time. So new intake documentation, such as new coordinated entry match email, intake documentation, and disability verification, are not needed in the situation where someone exits housing, becomes homeless. You enter an intake, person's homeless, and you rehouse them. That rehousing situation, you wouldn't need new intake documentation, but you would need to maintain the original intake documentation in the file. So that's been confusing for folks. I just wanted to make sure that that was understood. As CoC policy development was another new policy in 2023. It went into effect in February of 2023, and that just provides the workflow of when and how a CoC policy is developed and approved in our community. And finally, the unsheltered pit count policy is a new policy that went into effect October of 2023. If you were aware, the unsheltered pit count was last night into this morning. So I'm glad that that was able to be approved by the board prior, but it provides the process on how our community conducts the unsheltered pit count, including timelines and milestones, as well as reporting and debriefing. So those are the 3 new policies that went into effect in 2023. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the new policies? Okay. So we went through the coordinated entry and the new. So we had quite a few revised policies in 2023. So we'll go through those. The Housing Quality Standards Policy, or HQS. These edits went into effect in June of 2023. And in this policy, we updated language on the housing inspector required trainings to include the lead-based training and the strategies facilitated HQS training. So all of your inspectors are required to go through both of those trainings. It clarified transitional housing inspection requirements as only required prior to the initial payment and annually thereafter. However, the transitional housing provider must verify that units meet HQS when units turn over in the interim. When the transitional housing provider inspects a unit prior to identifying the household that will occupy the unit, the transitional housing provider must identify the number of children under 6 as TBD and complete the form as if the unit will be occupied by at least one child under the age of 6 to ensure the requirements are met regardless of the eventual occupancy. Again, this is just for transitional housing. But I know that some of the transitional housing providers, that's brand new information and can be kind of confusing. For all CoC housing programs, I'm sure you're well aware, as we communicate this pretty extensively. But for all CoC housing providers, we did remove the allowability of extension of repairs beyond 30 days of initial failed inspection, as well as updated language on escrow, specifying that these escrow payments cannot be issued using CoC funds per HUD regulations, which state CoC projects cannot pay any rent on client's behalf due to a failed inspection beyond 30 days. It was a huge blow to our community when we found this out. And had to revise this policy. So I'm sure you're all painfully aware of that change. Another policy that was updated, it was actually updated quite a few times throughout the last year, but it was the rapid rehousing rental determination policy. But the most recent update went into effect in June of 2023. So we added the exception of rehousing a rapid rehousing client to include allowing eligible move-in costs for when a household is rehoused while in the program. So if somebody is in your rapid rehousing program and for whatever reason you house them, and then before their length of time was up with the project, you had to rehouse that person, they added an exception of rehousing a rapid rehousing to include those move-in costs. This is exempt from rent calculation requirements. So in this situation, rent calculations begin in the calendar month following the rehousing date. So utilizing this exception does not affect number of waiver months used, and we added clarification. So that's been also a question we get sometimes from the CoC. So how does that work when we rehouse them? So your rent calculation does not go into effect until after the month after their rehouse. Now, that's just what they're eligible for. If you're, for whatever reason, your project, or maybe the person has income, your participant has income, and you want that rent calculation to be in effect that month, you could do that. You don't have to pay for all of the move-in costs if that participant is able to afford it, but we did want to make sure that we allowed that flexibility. We added clarification on subsidized units when also enrolled in rapid rehousing. So for rapid rehousing projects, cannot use CoC funds to pay for any costs that are covered by another federal subsidy. So the rapid rehousing project, at their discretion, may pay any, all, or none of the move-in costs that do not have other federal subsidies attached to them, but they can't pay, for example, rent. So if a project wants to pay any of those move-in costs that don't have a federal subsidy attached, you still have to do a past HQS inspection, and that must be documented by the program prior to move-in to that subsidized unit. So if they get CMHA or something like that, if you're going to be providing any of that financial assistance, that more flexible. When housing a client in a subsidized unit, services must be maintained by the rapid rehousing program during the calendar month of move-in. So if they move in February 6th, you should maintain those services through the end of February. Aftercare supportive services of up to 6 months may be provided to clients once housed in subsidized units. However, no rental assistance can be paid when they're in that subsidized housing, even if they get behind on subsidized housing. You cannot use CoC funds to pay for that. We did clarify rent waivers may only be approved for a period of 1 month at a time and should be made within 30 days. So there was a lot that went into that rapid rehousing rental determination policy in 2023. We also updated the emergency transfer plan. Edits went into effect in September of 2023. On March 15th, 2022, President Biden signed into law the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2022, which included the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2022. We refer to that as VAWA 2022. VAWA 2022 reauthorized, amended, and strengthened VAWA, the original VAWA. We updated our policies with the new VAWA 22 language, which now includes economic and technological abuse. We added prohibition of retaliation language. We added language around clients' rights to report crimes and emergencies without any penalty by the housing provider. We added language to transfer and timing section, the transfer and timing section to include that the housing provider and or coordinated entry staff will confirm receipt of a tenant's transfer within 1 business day in the same format that the request was made, unless that method of communication poses a safety risk. So if a participant requests a transfer through the VAWA process, VAWA 22 process, housing providers must confirm the receipt of that transfer within 1 business day. The the PSH transfer policy edits went into effect in October of 2023. We removed reference to ESG and clarified documentation requirements. We added that the review panel must approve all program participant transfers between service providers. Previously, Strategies was approving transfers. We wanted to put that back on the community, so the community would take ownership of those transfers. And that we wanted to really get your insight on that. Transfers between projects in the same agency. So if like Talbot House PSH 1 needs to be transferred to Talbot House PSH 2, those still go to Strategies coordinated entry and are approved on a case-by-case basis. Just 2 more. The expenditure threshold policy edits went into effect in December of 23. This is a brand new edit, so literally last month. So many of you may not be aware if you're not on Clearinghouse or part of these conversations. But we did change the invoice due date to 11:59 p.m. on the 15th of the month following the end of the quarter or the prior business day if the 15th falls on a weekend or holiday, in order to be considered timely for those quarterly calculations. So when you're submitting those invoices, that they actually gave a little bit more flexibility on agencies. It's now the 15th of the month. We also updated first quarter recapture amount to 18%. Therefore, the required meeting threshold is now 18 to 20%. So if you fall in that first quarter 18 to 20%, you have to have a meeting with me. Quarter 4 spending projections will equal the difference between the expenditures measured at quarter 2 and quarter 3. That's how we will project quarter 4 spending. This is a big change too. If the projection for the current year is less than the current subaward, the project will be able to enter into a subaward in the next contracting period for up to 110% of this projected amount, not to exceed the current contracted amount. So previously we looked at last year and this year. This year, I'd like to determine what you can renew for, but with this change, it would just be looking at your quarter 4 projections. Mandated reporter policy, these edits also went into effect in December of 2023, so brand new. We removed ESG language and we updated definitions on child abuse, child neglect, and child dependency to align with JFS definitions. And we changed the training requirements. So previously, new hires at any organization that predominantly served families, you had to your new hires had to complete a new hire mandated reporter training within their first 6 months of hire. We now are doing it the first 12 months. We encourage it as soon as possible, like way earlier, but from a monitoring compliance perspective, we are giving that 12 months. Due to loss of funding, the CoC no longer requires the specific keeping children safe training. However, we continue to require the same components of this training, which are outlined in that policy, in the mandated reporter training that the agencies provide to their own staff. We are no longer requiring recertification or annual trainings, but still encouraging agencies to complete recertification and annual trainings on mandated reporting for your staff. And agencies are required to ensure staff take the training within the time frame for monitoring. So you can no longer rely on community-wide trainings. We'll try to put on community-wide trainings, but because of the loss of funding, it's no longer funded by FHP. This will go back on the agencies to provide those trainings internally. And that's it for the revised policies. Any comments or questions on those? Willa.
Hi, this is Willa from CoC. I have a question about the quarterly threshold requirements, the percentages needed to be met. I just wanted to confirm, is that percentage spent of our entire award or by BLI? So we have 3 projects at CoC. Yeah, is it
It's your total award amount
the total award amount?
by
Okay, great.
project though. So if you have 3 projects, we'll be assessing those 3 projects separately, but we're not going, it's your total amount.
Okay.
Now if you're spending really low in one area and really high in another, you might want to consider doing like a budget amendment to move that funding around, but you wouldn't be the recapture would not occur and the meeting would not be required as long as your total project award amount is spent in that threshold.
And that only applies to the CoC program. It wouldn't apply to Hopwa grants.
Okay, great. Okay, awesome.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah.
Mhm.
So this is just CoC. So ESG, Hopwa, everyone, it's different. What other kind of questions do we have? Or comments? Okay. We have to vote. So thank you guys. I know that was a lot of information thrown at you. Do we have a motion to approve the CoC policies? That includes coordinated entry, new and revised.
I'll move that we adopt the policies.
Thank you, Peg. In a second, who would like to second? Is that Tabitha Brown? Play her hand went up.
If not, I can.
Second if you don't. Sorry, Jessica.
No, you're
Jessica
good.
seconds.
There
Okay,
you go.
Jessica Mount. Thank you, Jessica. Jessica
You're
Mount will
welcome.
second. Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, we're at 38. I'm going to lower 30. Wait, 40. We were at 40. So 40. Sorry, Carolyn, 40. I'm going to lower everyone's hands. Anyone opposed? Okay, and anyone abstaining? I just always got 2. Oh, got quite a few here. We have 8 abstentions. All right, thank you all. I'm going to lower everybody's hand. And next, I'm going to hand it over to Kim Manning. Oh, no, I'm not. Let me go backwards. I'm going to hand it over to Kim Manning. Go ahead, Joanna.
Can I ask one question
Mhm.
regarding like the mandated reporter policy? I know that we, FHP is no longer able to do it, but is it possible that if one of the agencies were to find a trainer that would be willing to do the training for a cost, that Strategies would be willing to accept payment from partner organizations, like from the CoC organizations, and all of that money for the training would run through them? Would that be a possibility? Because I know that a lot of us will have to have staff trained, and just wondering how that piece will work.
So I'm not sure if this will, maybe we can talk through a little bit. So I know that the mandated reporter is not a CoC eligible expense. So you cannot use CoC money to fund that. So are you saying like if YWCA
Yeah, like say that we contracted
Sponsors
with
it.
a company to come in and do the mandated reporter training, and then we invited other CoC agencies for their staff to participate, but they would have to pay maybe a $10 or $15 cost. Is that something that Strategies would be willing to do for the community?
So like
Like to kind
we
of
would
handle
we would
that?
invoice and then pay you?
We don't have a funding source for that.
No, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. I'm just saying that they were registered through the Strategies website. The payment would come through. We'll talk about it offline. How about that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we're definitely open to talking about it, but it does get yeah, invoicing and stuff can be a little tricky. But yeah, we can talk
Okay.
about it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Anything else before Kim moves on to HMIS? Well, take it away, Kim.
Okay, hi everyone. Kim Manning, the Strategies to End Homelessness HMS Director. It's good to see everyone. Thanks for your time and attention. This is important, and it's important to have engagement from all of you. So the HMI, we had some HMIS policy and procedure updates over the past year. They were effective as of August of last year, I think. The first one is the HMIS privacy notice and client consent form was updated. It basically was updated to include additional information on how data would be used. For example, including language on how HMIS system data would be used to facilitate placement in a housing program, and how HMIS data would be used for research purposes in order to end homelessness in our community. This new privacy notice and client consent form needs to be reviewed and signed by every client whose data is entered into the system, or those clients need to be marked as private. The form that is currently available in the Clarity system is the updated form. The form is also available on the Strategies website as a PDF so that it can be printed, and it should be posted in all intake areas. And if you're using printed forms, or if you're reviewing clients for a verbal consent, the new forms should all be in use by now. The HMIS user agreement was also updated. This is required when anyone logs into Clarity as an HMIS or is set up as a user. The primary update to this was to include the HMIS privacy notice and client consent form as a part of that user agreement, so that users are actively agreeing to abide by that HMIS privacy notice and client consent form when they commit to their roles and responsibilities as an HMIS user. The HMIS policy manual was also updated, and it was basically completely rewritten. The original or the previous policies, HMIS policies, there were, I think we had a data quality policy, security policy, and then a policy manual. And those were all written when we launched Clarity, so we didn't have experience to go with. So the revisions that were made to these policies were to make them more factual in how we are actually really managing the system and how the community is actually really working. So you can review most of those yourselves. Some of the things that just to point out is we did include definitions in the policy document. We incorporated all policies into one document. We did change the previous document referred to partner agencies. We changed that to CoC, Contributing Homeless Organization. It just provides broader coverage to anyone who is contributing to the HMIS. And we changed the HMIS agency leads to a CoC primary point person, or CoC PPP. Just again, helps with clarifying. We did add user and client grievance procedures, updated those, and also new data quality benchmarks were approved by the community. Like I said, those were pretty much completely rewritten. They're available on the Strategies website. if you go to the website and click on what we do, and then data, and then HMIS information, all of the policies are available there. I also just wanted to let everyone know that we would be updating the policies again in advance of the open system. So we've started on those updates. It will not be a complete overhaul like the last one was, except for the agency agreements also need to be written to be consistent with the new policies, and we're doing all of that at the same time as we update the other policies for the open system. Just to make sure everyone's aware, when we talk about an open system with HMIS, that really means that data within HMIS is being shared regardless of what agency you work with. So you would be able to see complete client history for any client, regardless if they were with your agency, with the exception of CoC. It does not mean that the system would be open and available to anyone who did not go through all of the training for an HMIS and commit to the restrictions that come with HMIS use. And that's it for me.
Any questions or comments for Kim? And I don't believe we have to approve the HMIS policies here because the PPP group, and I went back historically and we typically don't. So that was more of an update on the policies. I think we're done with voting, so hopefully, yeah, the rest will be smooth sailing. Okay, so the rest of the meeting will be mostly updates. So if you have a question, just raise your hand while we're speaking, and we'll stop at the end of the slides and take your questions. We will also open it up for questions at the very end of the meeting. So the first update we have is the Clearinghouse CoC strategic plan. So the Clearinghouse develops and implements action steps of a strategic plan. The community work groups and subcommittees carry out the work of the strategic plan and provide progress updates to the Clearinghouse quarterly. The 2020 to 2023 strategic plan contained a set of tasks across 6 key strategic areas: advocacy, best practices, coordinated entry refinement, property owner engagement and recruitment, CoC system capacity, and supportive services. So that plan ended at the end of December of 2023. And with that end of that plan, we did identify some key achievements of our continuum. So that included sharing and implementing best practices and knowledge across the CoC, as well as the property owner engagement work that was being done in the CoC to help obtain and maintain housing stability for those experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. Some key tasks in the plan, like replacing or revisiting the VI SPDAT screening and coordinated entry, are on track, but have not yet been completed. We're very close to completing that. This will improve the equity in our system. Some challenges that we faced during this 2020 to 2023 plan include aftercare. Family projects had increased resources and additional resources to provide aftercare recently, specifically in the last year. However, increasing aftercare for singles has been a challenge, and we're still working through that challenge. Additionally, although the CoC has partnerships and community for the linkages to like ongoing mental health, substance use disorder, transportation, and emergency assistance services, streamlining those partnerships has also been a challenge. So that is going to be another task in our future strategic plan that some folks will be working on. System capacity tasks like funding from healthcare or hospitals lagged, and the advocacy goal of passing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was not achieved after being on the ballot. However, we're going to continue advocacy in these areas as well. So the Clearinghouse has met twice to develop a 2-year strategic plan that is set to begin this year in 2024, and it'll go through 2025. So the Clearinghouse considered the previous plan's continued needs, as well as data, including the receiving a presentation on the CoC gaps analysis, as well as system performance measures to drive the development of the 2024 through 2025 plan. This plan has not yet been finalized, but very, very close. However, the following objectives have been identified, and now we're just really looking at the tasks within those objectives, and we will provide an update to the community at our next full meeting. So objective 1 is to improve the process for people coming out of homelessness and moving into a housing choice voucher. Objective 2 is to end racial disparities within the homeless system to include equitable hiring and promotion practices of staff and services provided to all people experiencing homelessness. Objective 3 is to incentivize organizations and individuals to move participants through the PSH and rapid rehousing programs. So essentially reducing the length of stay in PSH and rapid rehousing so we can serve more people. Objective 4 is to fund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And objective 5 is to recruit more organizations to provide housing and homeless services so that we can have a more diverse system. And Jamie's going to give an update on the racial equity work group.
All right. So this is just kind of an overview of everything that the work group's done. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but back in 2021 is when our racial equity work group was developed, and it started out of the work that we did with racial equity partners to do a full system analysis of where we were. And from that, we ultimately developed the action plan that had 5 key strategies: cross-sector collaboration, eviction and homelessness prevention, and landlord engagement, a focus on Latino homelessness, CoC operations, and training. So we still have those 5 key strategies, and we were actually working on updating that document, and we'll be sending it out once we have those updates, since it's been 2 years now. Some of the big things that we have, some big wins from last year would be within collaboration of the coordinated entry work group, we've drafted a new prioritization tool to replace the VI SPDAT. It has gone through every work group. It's gone through so many different groups and different stakeholders, both inside the homelessness system and even further out from the homelessness system. We've done listening sessions, and it's been very well received in all of those groups. So we are very excited to start working on rolling it out through first doing a pilot. So that will be beginning shortly. That's been in the works for like over a year now. So that's very exciting. We have also added, like I mentioned earlier already, the racial equity considerations that were added to the review panel process, and just making sure that equity considerations are really across the board in our system. Along with that, we made changes. We suggested changes that were approved to the scoring criteria for the large group scoring process to ensure there is a focus on equity across our system in all of our programs. Last year, we also developed a document called the 21 Action Steps for organizations to move forward in their equity work. And that document was a really comprehensive set of suggestions for organizations if they're kind of stuck, don't know what to do next to move forward, try something new. And that document is a wealth of ideas. So if you don't have that, let me know and I can get that out to you. And then the other thing that I didn't put on here that I should have is we have started a book club. So if you haven't already heard about it, we are going to be meeting on, oh gosh, somebody help me out, mid-February for our first meeting of the book club. The first book that the group will be reading is Hood Feminism, which is just explores the intersectionality between gender and race. And so we would love for everyone to join. You do not have to be part of the equity group to join in that book club.
Thanks. It's February 15th at 11 a.m.
Thank you, Laura.
I just looked it up.
Oh, and Shannon got it too. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks, Shannon.
And we'll be meeting at Element Eatery in Madisonville, so we can all meet in person and just talk about how the work from the book and how it relates to our work in housing. So please join us.
The next update we'd like to provide is an update on the People with Lived Expertise of Homelessness work group. This work group was established in June of 2023, so it's pretty new to our system. There are currently 10 active members. When I say active, it's ones that come like every single month. We do sometimes have a few people who come and go. And we continue to accept applications on the Strategies website. So if you have experienced homelessness yourself, or you know someone who has, and you would like them to or they would like to be a part of this group, they can apply on the Strategies website. Those who are on this People with Lived Expertise work group, I should add, they are compensated for their time. So because their input is very valuable to our system. So the work group has elected a chair, Hannah Schilling, and a co-chair, Amanda Sauber. Amanda represents the group on the clearinghouse, so she has the clearinghouse fee. The work group meets monthly in person, but these meetings are currently closed to allow for candid, honest conversation amongst the members. So if you have something that you need to bring to the work group, maybe an initiative that you're working on at your agency and or in another work group or committee, you would just reach out to me so I can make sure we put you on the agenda and you can attend to present your topic. And but otherwise, it is a closed group. The work group has developed principles and guidelines for the group of membership and have given critical feedback on system performance and other initiatives. They assisted in helping in the determination of moving to an open HMIS. Their feedback was very crucial in our CoC making that decision. They gave suggestions on how to improve outreach plans, as well as participated in the review and submission the ranking for our CoC application. So just in those short 6 months, they've made a lot of progress and have put a lot of good work into our CoC. They're currently developing their own strategic plan, and we will share that with the clearinghouse and the community once it is finalized. So we will have an update on that. So more to come on their exciting work. So thank you if anyone's on the call. If you're a member of the People with Lived Expertise work, we really appreciate everything that you do. And then I'm going to Jamie again. We should have probably not gone back and forth, but it's okay. Maybe next year.
All right. So the property owner engagement or Rent Connect program, we have fully implemented the program. Almost all of the housing program, CoC housing programs are up and running in our Padmission software. We held a recruitment event in August that went really well, and we're planning to do another in the spring of this year to just bring on more property owners. Our first event was really focused on just like any and all new property owners, and then this next event will be focused on looking at getting more property owners outside of Hamilton County and also getting property owners that have larger units and get those in Padmission. So that will be our focus. We are currently hiring the property owner engagement manager. So we're actively recruiting and holding interviews for that. So if you know of anybody that's looking that would be a good fit, please send them our way. But that's in the works right now. We hired a Padmission specialist this year as well, Kristen, who has been so amazing and has done so much for the program already. And then we also relaunched, since we kind of reused Rent Connect, so you guys might have already had that bookmarked from a long time ago if you've been in and around for a while, but we have relaunched that website, rentconnect.org, so if you want to learn any more about it, you can go there.
And then the next slide, I'm going to hand it to Jennifer and Kevin to tag team.
Okay, Kevin, yeah, definitely chime in if you have any feedback, but I get to talk about some very cool initiatives that we get to work on in the community. And a lot of these come to us because of the structure and the collaboration we have in the CoC. So it's really exciting to get to give an update on these this year. So we're working on a few projects. One is called the Built for Zero Large City Last Mile, and that is usually reserved for CoCs that have gone through a full 2-year process with a program called Built for Zero. Built for Zero is a project that just helps you keep an eye on your data and implement new initiatives to achieve certain goals around homelessness. We piloted a smaller project in the downtown area over the last 2 years, and because Cincinnati was very successful in that pilot, and because our CoC is advanced in data collection and collaboration, we were invited to participate in the Large City Last Mile and really kind of skip over the first 2 years that most communities go through CoC wide. So with a large city last mile, we should have access to some flexible funds, like as we determine gaps in our system. So if we think we need more street outreach workers, or we really need to get furniture for people. I mean, we know that we already know we need these things, but we can focus on some real sticking points of like really what is the highest priority to get people in housing and remain in housing. And then we apply through Community Solutions for some funding to address those gaps. They also connect us with national funders to support the work, which we could probably apply for on our own, but we'd have a better chance with getting the funding with their support. So we're looking forward to expanding that project. The agencies that worked with the pilot program downtown were it was around Generosity's 3CDC project in the downtown Cincinnati area, in collaboration with 3CDC and GCB, but Shelter House, Over the Rhine Community Housing, Strategies Data Analysts, Coordinated Entry, and the City of Cincinnati all participated in that pilot. And then with the large city last mile, we have added representation from the county, lived expertise, the library, I believe Talbert House was recently added. So
UC.
and am I forgetting anyone else?
I think that's it.
Okay, so we've already set the goal of ending chronic homelessness in Hamilton County by the end of 2025, which I think we can all agree is a very worthy goal. And we're also going to try to focus on unsheltered homelessness, but the data is hard to track in that, but also a worthy goal. So we'll be kind of paying attention to that. In addition to the large city last mile with Community Solutions, we are also continuing our work on the housing stability learning cohort, which is a targeted homelessness prevention project. We started this last year, and it's a pilot program with Community Solution. They're just starting this work, so we're all learning a lot. We get to work with other communities doing prevention and just share our strategies. Through that work, we learned that a significant percentage of people were entering our system or trying to enter our system through Westwood. So we have started regular meetings with the Westwood partners, and we're still learning about how we can work together, and we're still learning about the data that we have, taking a deeper dive and seeing what the population who's coming from that area looks like. The partners on those projects are Cincinnati Urban Promise, Neighborhood Allies. There's a couple of churches that are participating. We're working with a lived expertise consultant. Lighthouse has participated in some of the planning as well as Anthem. Then, okay, so the Impact Award. A lot of you have heard about the Impact Award, and that is a really exciting initiative that is using data to identify households in a housing crisis before they get an eviction notice. The partners in that project are the City of Cincinnati, Legal Aid, St. Vincent de Paul, Bethany House, YWCA, Sound House, and Lighthouse Youth and Family Services. We are still in the planning phase of that project. There's a service delivery team who's working out best how to contact households once we've identified them. There's a data team who's thinking about what type of sharing agreements do we need in place? How do we match people? How do we find, what data do we need? Where do we store the data? And then a leadership team that's guiding all of this work along the way. So very excited to tell you more about that next year. It was originally slated to start in March, but because of delays with the funding agreement and that sort of thing, we pushed it back to 7/1. In addition to that, we have the Innovative Homelessness Prevention Project, which is a pilot funded through the county ARPA SLRF. So this funding is to be in response for rebuilding communities after coronavirus. It's pretty flexible, and so the county asked us to put out an RFP for innovative ideas that we might not be able to do with some other funding because it's not as flexible. So we put out an RFP at the end of last year, and we had great response, really exciting ideas. There were 4 agencies funded in the initial round. That's Talbert House, Fountain House, St. Vincent de Paul, and Free Store Food Bank. We are starting a peer learning session with those agencies next month to learn about the projects and what they're doing. We're really excited to be able to share that information with you in the work groups, and how you might refer people to those projects. We'll also be re-releasing an RFP because the county had a cap on the amount that agencies could apply for. And so even though we had 4 great programs selected, we have some funding remaining. And so that RFP will go out by the end of the month. And then we're continuing the work with the Day One Family Fund. That is the $5 million that the community received from the Bezos Foundation to address family homelessness. Last year, we held several meetings and landed on some interventions for families experiencing homelessness, which is the Child Services Coordinator for Children in Shelter, the one-time rapid rehousing projects for families who just need a quick intervention to get out of shelter, but no ongoing assistance. Aftercare for families who have exited the system, but then find themselves again in a housing crisis and need a little support to remain housed. And our current partners on that initiative are Lighthouse Youth and Family Services, Bethany House, Found House, YWCA. We're also looking to add a program for family street outreach. And we will have a meeting very soon to kind of check in with all the agencies, see how things are going, and determine the next steps, because all of that funding is not allocated at this point. So more to come on that.
Great, thank you. Okay. So the slide shows all of the open and reoccurring committees and work groups that anyone can attend. So these are completely open. They are all currently virtual. So I think all of them are on Teams. I don't think we have any Zooms left. So if you have any questions on how to be included in these groups, or you need a link to one of these work groups, or somebody on your team needs a link to a work group, or would like to start attending a work group, or just want more information on the work groups, you can contact me. I'll put my email in the chat if you don't already have it. I'll also be sending out all of the materials after this meeting. It won't be right after the meeting, but it'll be this week. So you'll have all of that information as well, and you'll have my email if you have any questions. So before we adjourn really early, which is exciting, are there any other questions or comments on anything that we discussed today, any of the new initiatives or committees or projects that we've reviewed, or anything that we haven't reviewed?
From National Church Residences, with regard to the closed meeting committees, I have 2 questions. One, how are those committee members vetted, and what's the process for that? And 2, are those notes from those meetings available at all, or are those not available?
So there's only a few closed meeting. One is people with lived expertise work group. The vetting we go through an application process on strategies to end homelessness. That's a little bit more self-explanatory. And the reason we do the vetting is because we have a budget and we cannot exceed that budget, and we do compensate those people with lived expertise for their time. So currently, the vetting process isn't too intense because we only have 10 members. But in the future, when we have more more folks wanting to join, but not enough space, we'll be going through like a voting process of that work group. Now, as for the other closed meetings, which I think is just monitoring and steering, is there any other closed meetings that we have?
I don't know if
The
review
monitoring and
panel
steering
would
are the
be
two that are.
considered.
What would you say?
Is the review panel considered closed?
I don't know.
That's a seated membership.
It might be, and maybe the review panel. So I think there might be 3 closed meetings, review panel, monitoring subcommittee, and the steering team of the clearinghouse. And that is by nomination and vote. So for the monitoring subcommittee and the steering team, the monitoring subcommittee can be any community member, I believe. I don't know a ton about the monitoring, so it's one of the only committees I don't attend. But so the monitoring subcommittee, there's nominations that go to clearinghouse for folks to be on that subcommittee. The clearinghouse votes on those members. If you would like to be on that, you can self-nominate. And clearinghouse votes, and the monitoring subcommittee, those minutes are not public because they're talking about sensitive information that is about the CoC organizations and their monitoring. So those minutes are not public. Neither are the people with expertise work group minutes. I don't think they would mind. I might actually bring that to them if they want their minutes public. I think the concern was about speaking freely, especially if they're currently experiencing homelessness and engaged in any of the services that you all provide. Steering team, it has to be clearinghouse members, and that is a voting process through clearinghouse as well, nomination and vote. Those minutes could be public. We could, if you asked for them, as long as we don't move into executive session. So it's just more of a seated meeting because yeah, we're tackling like the agenda. It's not super intensive, but I don't know about the review panel. How does that work, Jamie?
The review panel is also by vote by the various work groups. The details on how the membership is determined is in the policy.
Okay, but for the most part, are meeting minutes on your website for all the other work
We
groups?
actually don't have them on our website, and I think that's a good thing, maybe something that we could definitely look into doing in the future, but they are all in our teams channels, which is I could send a link to you, Colleen, or anyone else on this call if you want to link into our teams. You'll have access to all of the work groups, all of their materials, minutes, data, anything that they go through if you're unable to attend. I think you might be on it, but I'll double check to see if you have it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. What other kind of questions or comments do we have? All right. Well, I just want to thank you all for not only for joining and participating in today's governance meeting and voting, but also for all the hard work that you and your organization do to serve those experiencing homelessness in our community. We at Strategies could not do the work that we do without the partnership of all of you. And thank you all and have a good rest of your day. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
thank you.
you.